Hi, everyone, and welcome to The X, a podcast inside Silicon Valley about how experience shapes everything, from products to businesses to entire industries. I'm Brian McLean, and I'm here with Demetrius Madrigal. Today is our last episode of Season 9. So we're going to have a little fun. We're going to talk about a few interesting topics in the news, ones that maybe you haven't been thinking about, and take a moment to reflect on Season 9 and all the topics that we explored since the beginning of the year. Good morning, Dee. How are you?
I am doing all right. I feel like I might have some tendonitis or something in my shoulders. So I'm like, okay, let's baby that a little bit. But other than that, I'm all fired up, ready to go.
Yeah, I'm like super exhausted today. Ended up having a middle of the night wake up and get all woken up and then it's hard to go back to sleep and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but it'll be fun. I was excited to do this podcast today because I like looking back at what we've done. Season 9, we've had quite a few episodes, talked about quite a few topics. And then also a couple interesting topics that you and I picked out that are in the news right now, but not in the news like heavily. And that's what I think will make it a really, really fun episode. But I wanted to first talk to you a little bit about what we've done in season 9. I mean, what are some of the topics that just come to mind before I read them off that really had an impact on you? You really enjoyed doing.
It's gonna be a little ironic, but actually, the Stanley tumbler, I've been using it. I still use it. It's been the best water bottle I've had of the different ones I've had. So, of the different topics that we've actually worked on, we've actually covered. This is one that I'm actually using on a daily basis. So that one by default kind of has the greatest impact. How about
That
you?
was an interesting episode because it was about a week after we did that episode that they started having those concerns that they used lead on the bottom of them.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, you heard about that, right? And then
No, I didn't hear that.
oh, okay, yeah. So this was like a really big thing. So they were saying they need a recall, all this kind of stuff. If you flip that Stanley over on the very bottom, there's like a round little, looks like a punch out that's filled in. It's
Yeah.
about the size of maybe like bigger than a dime, a little bit bigger than a dime or something. When the Stanley's put together, that little hole there on the when it's machined, when they push that cap in there or that punch in there, they weld it in and they use lead in order to seal it up. And
Oh.
so it's not accessible to the person who's drinking. That's what they say. And then recently they did a CT scan or something of it, like last week, I believe it was. And they said, yep, that's true. That's the only lead that is in there. It's just that little spot where they weld it together. It doesn't have any access to what you're drinking or anything. It's just like multiple layers between that and getting into the actual
Yeah,
liquid
because if
itself.
you look inside the cup, it's a solid layer of stainless steel.
Yeah, yeah. So what they're basically saying is they said they're gonna all future cups that they're gonna build, they'll look for a different type of material in order to solder that little piece back together. When I guess
Hmm.
they build the cups or whatever, but that became like a controversy. But they said that they're working on it, and I guess other manufacturers have done the same thing. It's just a little spot weld kind of thing, but they happen to has lead in the actual welding
Hmm.
material. And so that was interesting. It was like we dropped that episode, and then a week later, it's like all this controversy happened. But that kind of stuff happens. I was thinking back at some of the episodes that we did, and one of the ones that I really liked was when we did the Rabbit R1.
Oh yeah.
Um, it's the strangest device, and it makes me laugh because it's like we've been here before, like so many times of like a new technology comes out and suddenly someone creates a piece of hardware and then it does everything for you and you can carry it and just different components of that. But like the thing that made me laugh about it was like how awesome and intricate that software is behind the Rabbit R1, but then like
Hmm.
how strange it is that you have to carry an extra piece of hardware. And
Yeah.
so that's why I don't think that's going to last, but I definitely think that the software system they built was pretty amazing.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that because I just saw some tech YouTubers covering that and saying pretty much the same things that we were saying, that it's kind of it's a hardware Trojan horse in order to get some attention for the software. And I still look at it and think of it as like, hey, we're here. Here's what we can do. Come acquire us so you can have some AI capabilities in your company.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And we also addressed within the same season, we kicked off season 9 actually talking about the Humane's AI pin.
Yep.
So we ended up with 2 AI devices in season 9. Humane's AI pin is the same thing. I heard there's a huge layoff at their company. They're consolidating. They're trying to figure it out. I think once again, it's another piece of hardware. It's not about what the software does and what they were able to program, because that's really cool that you'll be able to use your voice, get everything you need, parse through information, and all that kind of stuff. It's the fact that you're adding extra hardware from a UX perspective. We look at it and go like, people don't want extra hardware right now, and that's just, I don't know. To fundamentally try to change that or force that on someone is very challenging.
So I remember at some
Yeah.
point I was looking at the Humane AI pin and somebody asked, "Oh, could this replace your phone at some point?" And it just kind of the obvious response is that so it's just a phone competitor. It just is a phone at that point if it can replace your phone.
But we're not. This
It's just
debate we're
a
going forever.
smaller phone that can pin onto your chest as
We
opposed to
were
one you
just
carry in your
talking
pocket.
about timing, you and I, before this
Yeah.
podcast started, and it's like,
Hmm.
are we ready to replace our phones, D? Because the reality is no, we're not.
I mean, what
Let's
are we
be
going to
honest.
replace it with? Anything that we're replacing it with is basically a new phone. It's just in a different form factor.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
mean,
anybody who thinks it's going to be dramatically changing, I don't think so. Unless, I mean, it might help if it was somehow a better form factor. But other than that, like we carry our phones around for a reason. They serve a purpose.
I don't see it happening anytime soon. The idea that you're just like, no, I don't need my phone anymore. I just leave it at home every day. Like, it's just not happening anytime soon. Timing is everything for a lot of
Yeah.
these devices and everything, and it's going to be maybe a slow little bit by bit. We're removing ourselves from some of the tethers of the phone
Hmm.
into other devices. But like this whole idea that suddenly you just release this one device and suddenly it's replacing our
Yeah.
phone, I just don't think we're there. We're just not there yet.
Well, communication is a fundamental human need. So unless we as humans change entirely, then that need is going to be served in one way or another. And the
Yeah.
way in which it gets integrated and served up to us can change so that some of these things that we find annoying or stressful aren't as annoying and stressful. But fundamentally, we need to have humans will found a lot of value in having an ability to communicate with each other that's readily available or to get
Hmm.
information. And until that need no longer exists, something that is very similar to a phone is going to be, carried by us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some of the other episodes we had, which I thought were really fun, was we had former Apple and VMware engineer Brendan Kelly on to talk about working from home. That's always
Hmm.
a fun debate to
That was a good
have.
one.
I reposted that one twice actually because the topic kept coming up in the news. So I thought it was helpful for our listeners. Talked about all the tech layoffs that happened in the beginning of the year. We talked about how YouTubers are quitting and people are just getting burned out, and because of the work, around being a YouTuber and what it takes to kind of keep that going. The mystery of the drone market, like what are people buying them for? What are they used for? Um, Disney making big moves with their investment into Epic Games. AI video, Sora and ChatGPT, video enabled tools, and how that's changing. Our testing of the Apple Vision Pro, um, our industry and the replacement of jobs in the field of user research, design, and strategy. Like we had a pretty thick um, season 9 with a lot of different topics. A lot of if you look at it in aggregate, you kind of go, there's a lot of change happening right now. There is
Yeah.
a lot of shifts that are occurring in the industry. And like we said multiple times last year, this is an election year. And for whatever reason, uh, every election year, there's a lot of things being moved around, a lot of pieces, a lot of uncertainty in the market. And so I think that's kind of part of what we're seeing as well. And actually, as we're recording this today, Reddit went public.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, it was this morning. I kept wondering, thinking it was like a Friday or whatever. No, it's Thursday, and we're recording this on a Thursday because of our schedule. So let's see, Reddit IPO. Let's see how they did on kickoff.
38% above IPO.
Yep, yeah, they're doing pretty well. I mean, it's the third most visited site on the internet, so I
Yeah, I mean,
understand that.
I've found with me falling off on Facebook and Twitter that kind of Reddit has kind of stepped in to fill the void. And one of the things that I like about it is that not to say that Reddit itself doesn't have a lot of toxicity. You can avoid that by just picking which subreddits you're a part of. And if you find one that's toxic, you can just not be a part of it and you never have to experience that. Just join things like cats and puppies and you
Yeah,
can have a great experience. It's very positive.
Yeah, and what's interesting also too about it is that Reddit's been around a really long time. You know,
Yeah.
they started Reddit the same year that we started our business.
Wow, that's a long time for a startup to eventually go IPO.
Almost
Like
20
18
years.
years. Yeah.
Almost 20 years. Yeah. And actually the reason why was they were supposed to go public in 2021, but then, we had a couple we had a war start and all these things happening, and they said it just didn't feel right. Like the whole market felt weird. And so they decided to pull
Yeah.
back and just pretend. It was interesting. The CEO was saying, just pretend like they were a public company, and they started reporting quarterly. They started like really tightening things up. They really started, just treating themselves like that. So by the time the IPO did come, it was just natural for them to be functioning as a public company. So
Yeah. I'm looking back at it, there's some interesting names in their history. Obviously, Aaron Schwartz, obviously no
yeah,
longer
that
with
was
us.
sad. Yeah.
Uh, they had a funding round in 2014. Check out some of the names on this funding round, right? Sam Altman, right?
Yep.
Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel. None of those are surprising. Ron Conway, Snoop Dogg, and
Yep.
Jared Leto.
They all jumped into the funding round of Reddit in
Yeah,
2014.
2014 funding round
Yeah, and they're
included
all
Snoop
doing
Dogg and Jared
quite well
Leto.
today.
Yeah,
I mean, that's back when the valuation was a lot lower too. I mean,
yeah,
it
I
could have
think
been
so.
they could have bought in at like $8 a share or something or less.
Yeah, I think Reddit also took a long time to try to get for quite a while. It was just rampant, rampant toxicity and a lot of horrible stuff on there. I think that that stuff still exists, but it feels a bit more kind of compartmentalized. I think that was kind of the trick for them to get where they are today, and they're still in the ramp up to this IPO. They made some decisions that rankled some people, including like cutting out third party apps, so you have to use the Reddit loader, which makes sense because they, when they're coming up on an IPO, they want to be able to tout their numbers as much as possible. But yeah, maybe some of that stuff that is not as popular with the user base can die down now that they don't have quite the same pressures on them.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And they've also done a really good job with moderation. I mean, they have issues, but like you said, if you look at all the social media sites, they're probably the best at it. When it comes to figuring out how to moderate and
Yeah.
subreddits and shutting down all the ones that are just inappropriate. I mean, the CEO
Mm.
had said this before, and they've had multiple CEOs of just the founders,
Yeah.
and have kind of said like, we're just not going to tolerate hate speech. So if we don't see
Yeah.
it, then we'll find it, and when we find it, we'll get rid of you. And I think
And
that's just the way to go. And you look at them being successful and launching, and being very popular. And I think Wall Street Bets helped a lot too. It brought a
mhm.
lot of people over to Reddit going like, hey, there's some really interesting stuff going on here. Maybe I should be looking at Reddit.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways that they did all that with the moderation was leveraging kind of the user base as mods for each subreddit. So it's kind of the quality of any given subreddit with on there is based upon heavily the quality of the mods who run it, and they're not dependent on just the moderation tools that are kind of automated and built into the background. And you see YouTube having issues with that. You see Twitter having issues with that. Um, or X or whatever you want to call it these days, but to have some actual human intelligence for people who care, who are devoted to that community, actually making sure it remains what it should be, whatever their vision for that should be. That provides something that is really difficult for software to handle on its own right now.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, hey, let's shift on over to a couple of these fun topics that we have kind of hand chosen. We each chose one. And, I find that like us just talking about things that are in the news in the moment, it's kind of helpful to our listeners, but it's not as helpful. And the only reason I say that is there's a lot of different news sources where you can get the basic information or understanding of things. Like Dee and I try to provide a UX perspective, but we try to look for interesting stories that kind of go like, huh? And make you kind of question things and think a bit. So, Dee, why don't you jump right in on the one that you saw and what you were thinking about?
All right. So there has been previously a clause within Tesla's terms and conditions for buying a vehicle that prohibit purchasers from selling their vehicle within a year, and it went away for a while. But it's back now with the new Cybertruck. So what this this clause within kind of the purchase agreement says is if you want to sell your Cybertruck, you have to wait for a year from delivery before you can sell it. And then if you were selling it within that first year, you have to apply for permission to resell it from Tesla. And you have to tell them why you want to, and they can just say no, you can't sell it. You're stuck with it for the year.
Yeah.
Um, if they approve it, you have to first give Tesla the opportunity to buy it back from you at a lower rate based on the original price based on mileage.
Got
If
it.
you do sell it without permission, in fact, you don't even have to actually sell it. If you list it, it could be enough for them to take action. The clause within the purchase agreement says that Tesla will basically sue you and bar you from ever buying another Tesla. So this is something that actually happens for some kind of supercars, like some
Yeah.
Porsches and Ford GT and things like that. Probably like a maybe like a Fisker or something like that. But this is, as far as I understand, a mass market car, not necessarily something where they're going to make like 1,000 units and sell only them. So it's a bit different. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts when you hear about this?
Well, so I originally heard this because, so first of all, I never even really understood this whole mentality until John Cena was on an interview on like
Yeah,
late night, and he was saying that he had trouble or issues with a car that he had. Do you remember which one he had?
yeah, the Ford GT. Yeah,
Yeah, that was it, right? And so they basically said that he couldn't sell it, which, maybe you could talk about that a little bit if you have some details. But they basically said like, oh, you can't sell it. You bought it and you're supposed to drive around with it. And I think there's like a brand perception there. So my thought is this: okay, I have two sides of it. One side of
hmm
it is like, I'm sure there's a business reason for this. So number one is if people are buying and reselling their items really quickly, then it looks bad on the vehicle. So they want people to hold them, they want people to
yeah,
experience them, they want people to try them for at least 12 months, especially if you bought the original one. The other side of it is probably this thing about like, if there's issues with the vehicle, we want you to don't want you to just sell it. We want to come back to us and tell us and let us fix them, right? So it's kind of keeping things internal, so to speak. Um, then there's this other side of my brain that goes, by doing that and setting up these rules and all that kind of stuff, it shows a bit of a lack of confidence.
it does. This is true.
And whether that's the intention or not, that's exactly what it actually shows. Is like, you're not really confident in your vehicle, so you're basically giving rules and regulations around what you can do with it.
hmm
Now, my question to you is, how would they know that I sold the vehicle? Meaning, if I sold a vehicle to you right now, I have a Subaru. If I sold a Subaru to you,
hmm
um, I would literally just change the title, and then you would take it over to the DMV, and then your name would be on it, and you'd be driving around with it. So how do they
Yeah.
know that I passed it to you?
Well, you're overlooking a little something that's different between a traditional car like a Subaru and a Tesla.
Okay.
That a Tesla has an operating system. That operating system is registered to a user who has a
Got
user
it.
account.
Okay.
So and they're also they're saying that they're tracking that if you list it for sale. So they're looking at the online car marketplaces to see if one gets listed, and they can track that back to the user and who posted it. But yeah, this is something to keep in mind is that ultimately, because it's an operating system that's based on web based updates and things like that,
Uh-huh.
they could. I'm unaware of anybody of them doing this intentionally at any point in time. They could just brick your car. They could just say you violated the terms and services, so we are shutting you down. I don't think they would do that. I don't think that helps them. I think that could be a very bad business, and it shows up negatively in the news, and then nobody wants to buy a Tesla because they're worried about him getting bricked. But that is a possibility within their toolkit.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about driving what do they call it, an iPhone on wheels, is
Yeah.
that, they kind of know everything, where you're at, that kind of stuff. And I remember, I think it was a YouTube page called Rick Rebuilds or something like that. But anyways, he
hmm
he was a guy who bought a Tesla that had been salvaged, and then he wanted to rebuild it himself and make it his and do all these crazy things to it. And he ran across a lot of issues, like of communicating with Tesla, not being able to get a key, not being able to turn on the car, having to convince them to allow him to do it, all this type of stuff. And the whole thing's documented like on YouTube because he wanted to try to rebuild one without having to be on the Tesla network and different things like that. But they have it kind of locked down. It's like an iPhone, right? They don't let you basically, break into it and do whatever you want to it. They have like certain rules and regulations. I'm not against some of these things. I think the reselling thing is a little strange. If you were buying Beanie Babies or the first Nintendo Switch or any of these other super popular items, you could buy it and then resell it for a lot of money,
Yeah.
within the first 90 days or whatever it is. And that's just kind of, I don't know, it's just kind of life in the market and capitalism, I guess. In this case, they're controlling it. And, users don't seem to be like responding that negatively to it, but they definitely don't seem to like love the idea of being controlled like that.
Yeah, so I mean that brings up a question of why are they doing this at all? And I've
Yeah.
heard people say like, "Oh, they're trying to prevent flippers." I don't really buy that. I don't think it helps them in any way to prevent flippers. I mean, I imagine that users are out there saying like, "We hate this, so we want it to end," but for something that doesn't hurt them financially, right? They're going to get their sales no matter what because they can only produce to a certain level and they're still not anywhere close to keeping up with demand, and they're not going to be within a year. So this year will expire without them meeting that. For them to then expend potentially a great deal of money on lawyers in order to enforce this doesn't make business sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, financially, it's very expensive to enforce this,
Yeah.
right? Having
I
to put
look at,
lawyers on it and go after it and that
yeah,
kind of stuff.
not just to, I mean, you wouldn't see a company do this just to prevent flippers so that users can wait and buy it from them. I don't think that necessarily makes sense. What I think that they want to do is Tesla, I think for a long time has been trying to kind of upend the way in which cars are sold. That's why they don't
Yep.
they don't go through dealerships. And the car industry in general has been trying to get rid of secondary markets for cars for a long time
Yeah.
because they feel like it cuts into their sales. You can look at the data and it shows that, okay, well, that's a way for people to get their first experience with a certain brand and then they can graduate from a used car to a new car in the future. But a lot of car companies out there are saying, like, no, we don't want there to be a secondary market. We want cars to be sold in the same way that companies sell smartphones now, which is every few years you buy one, it ages out, you get rid of it, and then you buy a new one. I think that they want to sell cars like that. And I think that
Yeah.
this could be, especially for a company like Tesla, who is currently more concerned about their stock price than I think they are with their revenue per se, that if they can keep the demand up with the number of pre-sales and things, their pre-sale numbers up, then that can help their stock price and could also be like an entry point for them to shut down like secondary sales of Teslas, and you just have to buy them new from us.
Yeah, I remember someone telling me one time about furniture sales, and they were saying that most new companies will buy brand new furniture, have it outfitted inside of the building, and then during recessions, the biggest
Mm-hmm.
competitor to the furniture outfitting companies are the companies that are closing and selling off their existing furniture.
Yeah,
So it ends up caving the market. So I get it. I understand what's going on with it, but it's also the kind of a thing that you shouldn't try to control, because if I own a vehicle and I purchased it and I own it outright, I should have the right to resell that vehicle and move on with it. I don't
yeah,
care. I disagree with the Ford one too with John Cena, right? It's like, yes, I understand that he got this supercar as one of the, first of X number, 1,000 or whatever it was. Um, he's still got it. It's still his. He owns it, right? Like,
yeah,
if you're worried about brand perception because people are flipping it or selling it, then I think you have a bigger problem, right? I think you have a
yeah,
problem of confidence in what you're selling in your vehicle. I think the better thing to do is to just be confident and say, hey, look, yeah, you got this vehicle. You can do whatever you want with it, but we hope you enjoy it. And if you have any questions,
yeah.
come back to us. And I think you're more likely to not sell it if they say that.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the supercar thing, like that's a different animal. Number one, those are, as we said before, those are not mass market products, right? They're usually building a few hundred, maybe 1,000 of them, and they're selling them. And you look at how they're sold; they handpick who is able to sell them. So even if you and I had the money, we wouldn't be able to go and buy one of these because you have to get a specific invitation. They want specific people buying them and driving them around. So for somebody like John Cena, who's a high profile person, that's the kind of person they want to own this vehicle. They want to have him driving around. They want people to know that he's the one who bought it. That is marketing and advertising for them. And if he sells that to somebody that we've never heard of who happens to have a bunch of money, then that is detracting from their kind of sales and marketing function for that product.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I mean that definitely doesn't apply for Cybertruck, right? Because that's not how it's being sold. Um, with the John Cena one, just to kind of because this is a little bit instructive. Uh, so there were ultimately 1,000 units of the Ford GT. There was originally, I think, supposed to be like half of that, and then they built more. He bought it for around $500,000 and then sold it for 1.5 after a few months. And he said it made his back hurt, so it wasn't really working for him.
Yeah. He's a big
Uh,
guy too.
yeah, Ford sued him, but it didn't make it to trial. They settled out of court. So I would say if you're out there and you're thinking, oh well, John Cena lost out on this. Number one, it didn't make it to trial. No court ruled on it, so it doesn't become legal precedent. It doesn't mean that this is enforceable because he settled. And I wouldn't be surprised. So we don't know how much they settled for. We just know that the amount that whatever they were settled for was paid from Cena to Ford, and they donated the proceeds. So it wouldn't be surprised me at all if he was able to recover his initial investment, and then the difference between, or some portion of the difference between his initial purchase price and the sell price, was ended up being donated. So there's still a legal question whether or not these clauses are enforceable because
Hmm.
they haven't been challenged yet. And it's entirely possible that they will be challenged based on what's going on now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting because you know, he made a huge profit on that. I mean, the fact that you bought it for 500,000 and sold for 1.5 is like, wow. So in a way, that's kind of like flattering. It's like you're Ford and you sold to him for $500,000. You sold it for 1.5 million. It's like people were clamoring for this vehicle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was the reasoning for suing him? Just breach of contract? You know what I mean?
Well, there's breach of contract. I think you got more attention for them. They didn't want I'm obviously speculating, but it also sets up like a precedent for other people who buy these cars and sell them that like, hey, we will try to sue you, and then you'll settle out of court and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So that can be a part of the deterrent. But I don't think any. I really don't think that Ford wanted to get to trial with that court case. I think they wanted to settle out of hand at a court and not end up with a ruling that these clauses are unenforceable and you shouldn't use them.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I would agree with that.
I wanted to ask you, what do you think is going to happen when it comes to these kinds of no resale clauses in the future? What are your predictions?
I think that I would say in the long term they're going to go away. I think the companies will stop doing this.
Yeah, I
I
think so
think in the
too.
short term they'll probably keep them and push on them a little bit. But I think what they're learning is that they don't really work very well. You get pushback, you get lawsuits, you get issues, that kind of stuff. And who knows? Maybe they'll find that it's not legally you're not allowed to do that. You sold something to someone, they paid for it. You can't make them sign a contract saying they won't get rid of it. But I don't. I think honestly, in the long term, when I think about it, when I think about customer experience, I don't think it's what people want, nor do they want to hear it. So I feel like they're going to be like short lived. I think this is a thing in the past. 2 or 3 years from now, 4 or 5 years from now, sometime down the line, these companies will just drop it and stop doing this.
Yeah, I
Unless
agree
they
with
make
that.
like a 1 of 5 or something and they made a deal, like they had a list and they're like, okay, do we pick John Cena or do we pick The Rock, or and they're having to like really scrutinize who gets the vehicle. Maybe they would say, hey, look, guys, if you buy it, we don't want you to get rid of it in the next 12 months or something like that. I could see that happening, but any mass market vehicle like that, nah, let it go. It's all good. People want to trade it, sell it, modify it. Let them do what they want to do. Just be confident in the vehicle you're building.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that I think that they're going to test the waters a little bit like they have done before. I think there's going to be, people will there's going to be some outcry, but the people will generally tolerate it because the Cybertruck has such a niche appeal that only certain people are really going to be interested in it. I think they're well within their rights to say, if you sell this, we will not sell you another one. I think that's
Sure.
perfectly fine.
You know
I
who does
think when
that?
you
I
get
think
to the point,
Lamborghini does that. I believe I
people
heard
sell their
Lamborghini does it.
Lamborghinis all the time too. Uh, but I think when you get to the point where like, oh, we're going after your money, we're going to try to sue you and take your money for the sale. I think that's from the point where you're like, all right, you're way overstepping. And if you're selling something to someone, then they need to own it. It can't just be they're renting it from you.
Exactly. I mean, that's where everything seems to be going. Is everybody wants to kind of rent things too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's a bad model. It can get you into a lot of trouble and can grease your liability in a lot of ways. It wouldn't surprise me if they tried to make this standard practice with all their cars, that they could be looking at class action lawsuits, especially if they end up finding out that some of these cars have significant design or manufacturing flaws. The I think it opens a large amount of liability for a small amount of financial gain.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Actually, I forgot to ask you. You know, when we were having lunch the other day, we ran into a Cybertruck owner who had driven their look. It looked like they drove the Cybertruck from Texas to Palo Alto,
Yeah, it had Texas
and
plates on it.
yeah, and you and I went up and spent quite a bit of time looking at the vehicle and looking at the wheels and the angles and all those different things. What was your honest opinion of it up close and really kind of spending a good 20 minutes like kind of analyzing that vehicle?
Well, it it mostly confirmed things that I thought before. Like I don't like the way it looks. I don't think it's super practical or functional for everyday use, even for somebody who's would normally be using a truck. There, it looks like it would be difficult to step into. It looks there were like the wheel covers on one side were taken off and they were left on the other, and the side where they were left on looked like they'd been curbed. There was a missing body panel. Like I was looking at it was a small one, the one part that's right next to to the um, the bed, the truck bed.
Yeah, it was a
Um,
retractable tonneau top.
it's right next. It was the stainless steel panel that should be right next to the retractable tonneau top. Um, I was actually a little bit concerned about the windshield wiper system because it's a single, very large windshield wiper, which means that it's going to be when the wiper wears out, having to replace it's going to be expensive. It's going to be a custom part. It's not going to be something you can just go to an AutoZone and pick up. And it seems to be because of its size and weight, probably puts a lot of stress on the motor, so the motor might wear out more quickly. Um, but yeah, I was less confident that a different kind of paint job would make it look significantly better. But I can imagine that like putting the right one on could open up some more interest from different people. But yeah, it didn't turn me around at all. What did you think?
Honestly, it looked really cheap. I'm sad to say that, but to see parts kind of off the vehicle, to see that the panel pieces come, you know what it is. Part of it too is that when I look at a regular vehicle, you know how we've rounded the metal around every corner. It
Yeah,
looks finished, but
yeah,
seeing panel pieces kind of pushed together, it felt unfinished. The wheel covers being off on one side and on the other, and then you look at the ones that were on were all beaten up and plastic, and I was like, why are they plastic? And then you made a really good point, which you're like, hey, the regular wheels look great. All you have to do is put hubcaps,
yeah.
center
They have an
caps in.
exposed hub, so you have to have
Yeah,
like a center cap in. And look, and
center
I thought
cap.
that was the best looking part of the car.
Yeah. So you put a center cap in and put some beautiful wheels on there. Yeah, I don't know. I've seen wraps done on them, and I wonder if the
Hmm.
wraps actually wrap the corners. Because I think that if you went
Yeah,
around the corner with the wrap and you didn't have the seam lines, I actually think it would look a lot nicer. It would look a lot smoother, a lot beefier, meaner looking. Um, I got to give him credit on boldness. I mean, you definitely walk down the street and you see it and you go, "Whoa, Cybertruck!" Right? Like it definitely creates brand awareness for Tesla. it makes you think of Tesla all the time. It makes you think that they're pushing the limits, which I got to give them a little bit of credit for.
Hmm.
But up close and personal, it looked kind of cheap, and it might be because of the fact that so many parts were missing on this vehicle, and it looked like it'd been through hell and back. And it had Texas plates on it, so they may have just drove it all the way from Texas. They may have off-roaded it. Who knows what they did with it? But I was just not impressed, and I wanted to be impressed. That's the
Yeah.
shitty part. Is like I actually was like, man, I want to walk up and be like, whoa, the future. And I didn't. I walked up and I thought, this has got a ways to go. Now, if you like the look of it, which I'm kind of like 50-50. I think like the front of it kind of looks neat, the back of it doesn't. You were reverse. You like the back of it, not the front of it. Um, if you like the look of it, I can imagine all the things I'm complaining about to be easily fixed for the next version. I really do. Like putting in real nice rims, like get rid of these plastic covers, you know, trying to keep those seam lines tight, you know, giving it something like a matte black or some other cool colors. Like you could really do a lot of extra things that beef the vehicle up, um, and give it a cooler, more designery look. But as it is right now, like I was sadly not impressed, you know, and I got to
Yeah.
be honest, I don't want to lie, you know, I was not impressed. So kind of bummed out. I
I
was
think,
just hoping to be fun.
yeah, I think one of the differences in our opinion was when we did the last podcast, I had seen one in person before.
Yeah.
So that I was coming with those impressions. I didn't take as deep a look at that one as I did at this one. So, and that one was not as beat up. And you pointed out that because of the it did not have a decal on there indicating that it was like an engineering sample that had been out there kind of road testing and endurance testing to see that it was okay. But I personally would not. I would be upset if I had a vehicle that had only been available for what, a month or two now, um, and it had driven from Texas to California and looked as beat up as it did.
Yeah.
I would expect that if I took my car and drove it from Texas to California, or back, vice versa, that it would be in better shape than that.
Yeah, it was kind of a bummer actually. I don't know why. I just had high hopes for it because I always like things being pushed. I like change. I like to see things differently and stuff. And I was not impressed. So, you know, I don't know. We'll see how it unfolds. I mean, it definitely gave me DeLorean vibes.
And that's why I think you really like it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I always thought the
You're a big
DeLorean
fan
was
of the
such a cool
DeLorean.
vehicle. Yeah, and it's almost exactly. It's like if a DeLorean and an El Camino had a baby, right? And it's like, no, seriously. And
Yeah,
it's like if you blend those together, and I thought, oh, this is cool. But like, you know, it proves that like these stainless steel body panels and all that kind of stuff are really hard to match them up on the edges and really make them look,
yeah.
solid.
Well,
So,
I just don't think
uh,
the geometries make a lot of sense. I think it creates a lot of like flat angles that if it comes in contact with things that it could just direct. It doesn't deflect as much as it just like transfers the weight,
yeah,
the force directly. And I don't know why they did it the way that they did. But yeah, I look at it and I think to myself like, all right, this is. It looks like a industrial designer got started by drawing out some baseline geometries, and then somebody said, "No, stop there.
yeah, yeah.
Don't finish."
Well, we'll come back to this in season 10 because I think I want to try to drive one as well. Um, all right, let's talk about our final topic. So you'll love this one. Hewlett Packard is now offering printer subscription services where you can rent a printer with ink cartridges starting at $6.99 a month, and you can upgrade every 2 years. Plans are based on how much ink you use, and the ink is shipped directly to you once the system detects that it's low. Okay. Um, so, what are your initial thoughts of this? This is the strangest new service I've seen in a very long time.
So yeah, I saw this and it was just this is just feels like an act of desperation.
Yeah, that's what I felt too. I was like, I,
Yeah,
I don't understand what's going on. Okay, first of all, let's set the stage here. D, you need a printer. You're not
yeah,
necessarily getting a specialized one like I bought. I bought an inkwell printer because I do a lot of crafty kind of printing stuff with my son and stuff. Okay, so I bought an inkwell. The ink only cost $20, lasts like 2 years. It's incredibly awesome. I think I paid $369 for it. If you just want a regular printer in your house, you can get a regular printer for less than $100. So, why am I renting a printer that's not mine and then just paying for ink to be sent to my house when probably the majority of Americans, I could be completely wrong, maybe their marketing department knows way more than I do, don't print that much anymore. We print a little, right? We have certain things that we
Hmm.
print out, school functions, maybe a little bit of business stuff. But printing, based on the statistics I saw, has been going down and down and down and down and down. Why would I want to have a reoccurring cost every month instead of just buying the printer, getting some ink every year, and calling it a day? I don't understand.
Uh, you wouldn't. It makes no sense. So the reason why you might want to is because you really care about HP as a brand and you want to give them more of your money. That's kind of the only reason. So
Well, maybe
I'm
I
looking
have this
at
other theory
the
that just popped into my head right now. So I've heard
okay.
people say that the cost of ink, let's say, costs $49, but a brand new printer they can get on sale during Christmas time for $69. That they keep buying printers and then just giving them away, and then
You can
getting the
buy a
printer
printer
with.
right now on Amazon for $50.
Yeah. So if the ink
Right
costs
now.
roughly the same,
Not even on sale.
yeah. So if the ink costs almost exactly the same as that, and I can just go buy a brand new printer that comes with ink to start, then I'm constantly replacing printers. Maybe it's a way of kind of just saving on like helping the earth and not having like so much plastic and all that stuff in there. I don't know. I'm
But
stretching here, dude. I'm stretching.
you're stretching for sure because they could easily just say like, "Oh, hey, you can buy um, you know, ink that is cheaper. You can almost always find some form of cheaper third party ink." I mean, so all right, let's just do a little bit of math here, right? So the cheapest printer they have on here, which is the HP Envy, it starts at $7 a month, and it says it has an output capacity of 25 sheets. I assume that means 25 sheets a month. So you can print out 25 sheets of paper a month.
That's nothing, by the way.
That's if you're printing, that's not very much at all. So if you buy that printer, it's about $80 on Amazon right now. That exact printer, $80 on Amazon.
Okay.
We have a printer in our house we've been using for at least 10 years. And it's probably around this price. We don't print that much. I mean, I think most people don't. Like, I print out some sheet music and tabs, and for the most part, that's the only thing I print out. And if I get a better tablet at some point, I'll probably just use that. Um, Now, if you buy the ink, it is about $35 for a pack of ink.
Okay. How
That's
many pages?
actual.
Should say
Let's
on there
see.
like 1,000 or something. 500.
It probably does. 120 pages.
Oh, that's light. Okay, so 120 pages.
Yeah, so I think that within 10 months, by buying it, you'd probably recoup your costs in about a year,
Okay.
and then you would stop being purchased. I think this is a strategy that HP looked at and said, "Hey, people are buying; they're not using these things a lot, so we need to find a way in order to ramp up our revenue without increasing our use. And the way to do that is for people to pay for to have the capability of printing without actually printing. So we want to charge them for hosting our products in their house, which there's no value proposition above just owning a printer, really.
So here's what they basically said on the Q&A for that question. Why get the HP all-in plan and not just purchase a printer? It says with the HP all-in plan, you don't have to worry about finding the right printer, running out of ink, or troubleshooting printer issues. The HP plan is an all-inclusive service that ensures that you have the printer, the ink, and the support you need to keep things working. And if they don't, we'll send you a new printer the next business day. You can also try it with no upfront cost commitments like everybody else. So,
Well, they could just build printers that work and
yeah, that's
don't
true,
fail.
right? See, that's the thing, right? Is like to me, it reeks desperation because it's like, you know, if you're basically saying people you need troubleshooting, you need like tech support, and it's like, why do I need tech support on a printer? Like I just click print and it prints, and then I
Yeah.
use the print software in order to format it, or set, why not just fix the print software so it works well, and then I want to keep my printer. So to me, even if it's financially makes sense, I don't think that emotionally or logically people see that it makes sense, because people already have fatigue of paying like, $12.99 for Netflix and blah blah blah, this amount a
Yeah.
month per this, right? So now you want to add another service plan, which I know
Hmm.
creates reoccurring revenue, and that's exactly what the stockholders of HP probably would love. But like, you're giving me something that I find is a field replaceable unit, meaning it's like it breaks, I basically donate it, give it away, repair it,
Yeah.
whatever I need to do, and just get a new one, right?
There's a
And that's the way
reason
it
why you
works.
don't buy extended warranties on $50 items.
Exactly, right? It doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. So the fact is, now I will say this: what's really cool, and they should be doing this, because I have a filtering system for my water here at the house. And the second that the filter starts to get low, they automatically mail me a new one and charge me for it. I have the same thing for cat food. I have the same thing for, right? So those things are great. And I love the idea that their printers will say things are low, press OK to have one sent to your house, and they just bill you. That's amazing. That's beautiful. That's how it should happen. I don't want to have to go look for printer number 472 and go over to like Office Depot. Like, it should just come to my house and you should just get my money. Like, I agree with that. I don't understand the idea of doing this with printers. Matter of fact, just do it with ink. Just say, I have this printer. I
Yeah.
need ink. Here's my IP number. When it's low, send it to me. Right? Like, that
I
to me seems like
yeah.
a good plan.
I imagine that would be, if that doesn't exist, it needs to. It should just have sensors that are on there. My Roomba does this, right? Where like, okay, well, your bag's getting full, you can buy a new one, or you can automate it so that as it's getting empty, it automatically orders it for you. At the end of the day, though, the value proposition is just like, you look at just all right, looking at this $35 pack of black and tricolor ink that can do 1,000 pages. If you buy it on Amazon, it's free delivery tomorrow with Prime. So it just shows
Mm-hmm.
up tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's and if you're buying something and they're telling you like, oh, you're buying this $50 thing, but you really want to have the enhanced customer service or troubleshooting or something like that, my immediate response is like, so you're telling me this thing is poorly built and I'm going to have problems with it. It's not
Well, let me
going to be
ask you, when's the last
reliable.
time you called customer service for your printer? Yeah, right, right. I don't know anybody who's ever called. Now, here's the one thing I find really interesting. It says, what if my printing exceeds my monthly allowance? If you exceeded the number of pages in your plan in any given month, so I think you said, how many do we get? 25 pages only for that
Yeah.
6.99 a month, right? Dude, I mean, you print like one PDF document from a school project. I swear it's like 11 pages.
Yeah.
And you haven't accumulated enough rollover pages, you can continue printing without interruption an additional sets of 10 to 15 pages per $1 per set.
Oh my God.
So every 10 to 15 pages, they add $1 to your bill.
So this just adds an incredible amount of cognitive load, right? If you're like living with anybody else, I mean, if you're living alone, now you have to track how many pages of paper that you've printed when you print
Yes.
things. And if something
So
fails, do they have a mechanism in order to say like, oh, hey, this thing got jammed, so we're going to reimburse you for the page that you tried to print that didn't print out properly? And what do you have to do in order to do that? It's like a whole new set of, you could log into their app and post it and then wait for them to respond and blah blah blah. Like that, it's just nobody wants to do that. And
no,
it
this
provides
reminds
no
me of
value.
leasing a car where you're like, how many miles are on the car? How many
Yeah.
miles is it on this trip? We're going to exceed my lease miles. Let me call and find out what happens if I go too many miles over on my drive to LA. Like,
It's the
ugh,
number one reason to not lease a car.
exactly,
And
right?
now they're introducing it for leasing a printer.
Yeah. Yeah. I am not for this at all. Like,
So
I think HP makes absolutely phenomenal printers and always has, but this is wreaking desperation. Like you said, it makes you feel like maybe their printers aren't that great. It seems expensive. It seems confusing a little bit, even though it logically makes sense. You're like, wait a minute. How many pages am I using each week? I just think it's a bad idea all around.
well, yeah, and I like HP. I have an HP Ultrabook that I use as like my secondary laptop. I have way too many computers, but th- this doesn't make sense. But you know what could make sense, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were already doing this, as this is where this comes from. If somebody is looking at, high end use for like an office space, or if they're a serious creator,
Yep.
then renting a higher end one rather than buying it, and then they get
Totally.
the maintenance that's associated with it. They get all the materials on a subscription basis. If the office closes down, they don't have to go out and sell it. They just return it and shut down their subscription. That's
Yep.
where it makes sense. But mass market for paying $7 a month for a $70 printer, that then you have to then track how much you're printing each month. That that makes no sense from a user
Well, I
perspective.
mean, if you think about it, right, there are some high-end printers that they make that are phenomenal, right? And they're
Hmm.
like $10,000, $20,000. If you're like, oh yeah, for 25 bucks a month, you can have this thing here, and then we'll send you ink when you need it. You're like, great, one less thing to think about. That's okay. That's fine. I mean, they probably have already been doing that forever. This is more of a consumer version. And even if they're picking out, let's be fair, let's say the printers that they're offering are printers that cost 149, 249. It's still so cheap that you're like, put on my credit card and pay 25 bucks a month if I wanted to and own this printer, and it's mine and I own it. Not I'm like renting it and I have to take special care of it. What happens if your kid throws a football and it lands on top and breaks something? Like there's a lot of questions that run through your mind when you're renting something, and they say, well, it's not exactly renting. And I'm like, no, you actually kind of are renting it. You're leasing it. Um, the trade-in thing's kind of cool, I guess. Every 2 years you get a brand new one.
Yeah.
Which is
Well,
optional, I guess, if you
that's.
if you print that much.
I mean, do you need to?
This would have been a service. This would have been a service D 25 years ago. If they offered it, they could have made a fortune on,
They.
when
Well,
everyone was still printing.
yeah, but you don't have the back then. You didn't have the software tools in order to really manage it and streamline it and make it easy. You'd be paying a bunch of customer service representatives in order to manage this. So
Yeah.
you probably could have, but then it would have cost you a lot more. So the there is a higher end version of the plan. It's $13 a month, and you get an HP Office Jet Pro. Looking it up on Amazon, that is $160 with 6 months of free ink.
Uh,
So, I mean, just economically doesn't make sense. If you are a professional, if you're in an office, if you're a photographer, you need to print out high quality photo prints, that potentially makes sense. But for somebody who just needs to print out like school assignments and stuff like that,
well, what if you're
this
low
I can't
income?
see it.
Like, I'm thinking about this now. Let's say you're really struggling financially as a family, and you have a kid in school, and they need to print things out. Do you pay $6.99 a month if you're struggling financially, or do you find other means like going to the library or printing at school?
I mean, if you're struggling financially, number one, this is bad because it's going to cost you more in the long run. It's one of those examples of which being poor is really expensive.
Yeah.
um, because you're going to spend more money on this than you would otherwise. And you should use libraries and other resources or Kinkos or something like that. You know what would work better? Again, trying to give them ideas. A printing service, right? Where if you don't want it, I don't even want a printer in my house. I just want to be able to print something when I need to, and it happens fairly infrequently. Pay for a $3 or $4 a month service, or just paper print thing, and it shows up on your doorstep the next morning. That way I don't even have to have a printer taking up space in my house.
Yeah, see, that's a
I
little
don't want
different
to.
than me because the times in which I need to print, it seems like I just need it right away. Like if it's something I'm mailing out for our business or something like that, it's kind of like, I don't want to wait till tomorrow. You
Well,
know what I
that's not
mean?
your use. I think that there are people who are like, I don't even want a printer in my house. I've got a small apartment. It takes up
True.
space. It takes up
Yeah.
energy. Like I print, you know, there are definitely, I think, people out there who print like what, a few times a year. If your child wasn't in school and printing out school assignments, how often would you print things out?
Probably just during tax season.
Right? I mean, I don't even print stuff out during taxes. I just go all paperless.
Oh
So
no, I have to pay for, the corporate taxes and all that stuff like that. So I actually write a check and then send them to the,
yeah,
California and the federal government. So it's like I end up printing those out. You could do it online, but you pay fees. So I've always just said, like, it takes me a couple minutes to print it. So I just do it. So it's like, yeah, it's not that often.
but even
Yeah.
then, like you don't necessarily need to have that's something that's predictable. You can go to a library or somewhere else, or like Kinko's if those still exist, and or if they have this printing service, just it just shows up the next day, and then all right, good to go.
All we
Like
need is
that's
one printer on the whole street, my whole block.
yeah,
One person has
community
a printer,
printer.
and then they give me access to their Wi-Fi, and everyone on the
There
block
you
can
go.
print to the same printer. There you go.
There's your social network from going forward. You have community printers that within on Nextdoor, for example, there's a community printer service, and you can be like, hey, let me book your printer for use, and
Yeah, there you go.
and you can book my lawnmower in response or something like that. Like, I think that's
Try
amazing.
right. Try raising VC funds on that. You're like, so I have this idea for printers. They're like, go leave. But no,
Mm.
I don't. I'm not bagging on HP in particular. I like HP as a brand. I'm bagging on this idea. I just don't think it's a good idea. I think it's going to disappear.
Oh yeah, it's going to disappear real quick.
So
I think they're testing the waters. I imagine their
yeah,
sign-up numbers are very anemic.
it's not. It's probably not a huge thing to spin up, spin down. So if it doesn't work out, they can spin it down real quick and just it's a thing of the
Yeah,
past.
I mean it's like a web page, and somebody probably built a sign-up sheet in an app or something like that. It's really cheap.
Yeah, not that bad. Oh man, oh, you're getting older. I can't
I mean,
do
if
this
this
midnight
operated at
not sleeping.
scale, if this operated at scale and people were actually using their printers, they could lose money on this.
You've gone all the way down from I don't like this. I'm gonna give you guys some ideas. I think you're gonna lose money.
It's possible. Think about this, right? People get their printers. If the printers fail and they send them out new printers, or if they have to spend a bunch of money on tech support because the printers aren't working very well, or because the users don't know how to use them right, or man, you know how much time I spent on tech support for seniors in my life? Like if I was
That's
charging for
true.
that, oh my god, that could end up being the demographic that picks this up. It's like, oh well, this is easy. I get the tech support. I'm buying it for the tech support. Now you have to potentially pay for call centers to handle this. And the amount of volume could increase that and doesn't scale very well. I mean, maybe if you have really good AI bots, but most of them suck, and a lot of the so far. Uh, and even if they were good, a lot of people within that demographic don't want to talk to an AI bot.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Well, overall,
Can you imagine if they had a defective
wait.
run of printers and they had to send out new ones? Oh my god, just the shipping fees alone could end up eating up all their margin.
Okay, so should I even ask the question? What are your predictions on this?
I think this is a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
I think this is like, all right, we tried a thing, it didn't work, and then somebody. Here's my prediction, because it is true that because the way that printing is, the way the use of printing has changed is making it a very difficult business to maintain. Right? You need to make a certain amount of money in order for companies to say it is worth the opportunity cost of not devoting that to somewhere else in order to keep printers around. But they're just needed enough that people can't really go without a printer. So I think that this is an indicator that something is going to come along, whether it's my community printing idea that feels like it should be coming out of a co-op, or something else, or a printer service or something like that, because it's printing is something you don't do very often, but when you need it, you need it.
Yep.
So it's the kind of thing that people want access to, but they're going to be looking at how can I do this for the least amount of money possible. So I think somebody eventually is going to come up with something creative that's going to serve this, and hopefully it's HP or Epson or somebody who's been around for a long time, who's probably got good people there and everything. But this ain't it.
It's like it's like one of those things that you look at it, you study it like a business school thesis, and then you learn from it, and move on.
So
Um,
this is a printer timeshare.
it's Pinder. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. But we'll. I
Do
always
you
say
have any
we'll
other
see how it turns
predictions?
out.
Yeah.
Um, I think that this is just like you said, an experiment to see if would work or not. If I was HP, you know what I would do? I was thinking about it right now. I know nothing about their business. I know no one in the printer section. I want to be very clear with everybody. I would say here's the deal. Printers are having an issue right now. People don't really want them as much. We are going to make 3 printers. They're going to be the best printers that have ever existed on the face of this earth. There's going to be a laser jet printer, I mean, these are consumer ones, not industrial. We can consumer, LaserJet, Inkwell, and inkjet. As a consumer, you get to pick one of the three. That is it. There is no subcategories. There's no ones with screens and without screens. We're going to decide what is the best printer we can possibly make on Earth. And then you get to pick one of the three printers, and that's it. It's over with. And that's our printer division.
Yeah, they do have, it feels like, a million SKUs.
You go to like one place and they're like, well, we have the HP 712436. And you're like, oh, is that good? They're like, well, not as good as this HP 712438. And I'm like, do you sell that one? No, we don't sell that. That's only a Best Buy. And you're like, what? Like it's incredibly confusing. And so you just tell me like this is the best printer that's ever been made, and it's an Inkwell printer, and it costs you $20 a year in ink. Great, I'll take it. If that's the
Well,
business you want to be in, right?
yeah, I think there's a way also to convert any cartridge-based printer into an inkwell.
Yeah,
I think that
great. Do that
there's
too then,
hobbyists out there doing it. Yeah.
Get a hopper on the side of it, pour a ton of ink in it.
Well, we
Whatever it
laugh, but
takes.
like literally, my partner has a really, really high-end photo printer that has like all these tubes coming out that go to like these inkwells, and she's had it for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. So I think there is a way in order to convert
Yeah,
them if you really want to.
absolutely. I mean, when you have a really well-made printer and it works when you need it, it feels great. And then when it
Hmm.
doesn't work when you need it, you just get really, really upset and you want to office space it. Right. And so it's like the key is just offer something really amazing and then just get me on subscription for ink. So I never have to think about it again. It just shows up in the
Just
mail. They're like, hey, your ink's low. Here it is.
well, you said it right. Just fix the printer problem, right? When you say office space, there's a reason why printers are known for that, right?
Yeah.
They always seem to have. I remember when you and I were talking about 3D printers, and we were kind of debating whether or not it was going to be the next mainstream big thing. And I went home and I had like to spend some time like uh, troubleshooting my basic uh, 2D printer, and I came back to you and I said, nope, 3D printers are not going to be a thing, and here's the reason why: because it can't even get 2D printers to be reliable. And
Yeah.
I
And
think if you could fix that, then like you change the entire brand perception, and the entire perception, product perception, category perception around printers.
yeah. And for me, I went and took a class on how to use a 3D printer. And then I was like, yeah, this is never going to happen.
Yeah, I took that
Like
class with you, and
I
I
went
was like,
in there
oh
and they're
man,
like, load this in here and print here. Oh, it made a mistake. 7 hours just went by. Right. So
you
it's
have to
like,
watch
it
it.
was, you have to watch it. You have to pay attention to it. They're a lot better now. To be honest, they are. I tried
Yeah,
one recently and it was really cool, but it did take a lot of setup and it had to have a good file. And like, it's hard. It's hard stuff. And if people need it, then you got to be a company that makes great stuff that people buy and they use it for very niche purposes. But the average consumer isn't. And we thought they would, and they aren't or haven't yet. Um,
yeah,
but but yeah, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. This thing, like I said, I've always loved HP products. This particular service, I do not like, but that's
yeah,
okay. I don't have to like everything that they do. But anyways, I wanted to end here and really thank everyone for such an amazing season 9. There were times that Dee and I came into this because we get very busy sometimes, and we were so tired. But then it's funny, like we do the podcast, and then all of our energy comes back because we just love talking tech and sharing things with people and sharing our experiences. And we really appreciate everyone who's been listening, and we hope you'll go back and listen to all the episodes that you missed before we start season 10. Our goal with season 10 is to have some interesting guests on. I've already closed one of them that you don't hear from very often, as well as adding video. We've kind of been getting that setup going. And we're probably going to shake up our music, or shake up our intro, shake up everything, and really kind of start fresh on season 10 and see how it goes. Because it matters to us. We don't get paid for this, but we like it. And we would love to get paid for it one day, because then we could pair off the other things that we do and really spend time talking to you. So thank you all again. Really appreciate it. Amazing season 9. And we will see you all when we're ready to kick off season 10. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.